we can help our brands become more human in society and really inspire you to market like you give a damn. And there's nobody better, in my opinion, than Afdhel, who just recently wrote this book that, as I'll have a copy of, to inspire us in that manner.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having us. Everybody's got a copy of the book, by the way. Yep, it should be in your goodie bags. There's a bunch outside if you haven't. So, Jim, thanks for inviting me. So, I've been a client-side marketer for about 18 years now. I've worked for Procter & Gamble, Nokia, Heineken, and now Absolute, where I run Absolute Labs, which ironically looks at new technology like VR and AR and all this kind of things. And I got to a point about 3 or 4 years ago where I started to really think about whether what I did as a marketer was meaningful, whether it had a deeper impact on the world. And that was really the beginning of the journey that led to me writing this book. So I want to start with a question to everybody in the audience. Raise your hand if you've ever had a moment in your career where you went, I would like to do something that's more meaningful and has more impact on the world, socially as well. All right, a fair few of you. Okay, so we're going to show you a chart, which I love, which is in the book. This is a survey that Adobe did. They did it in 2013 and 2014, so it's not an error. They did it twice and got the same results. Look at the top, the least 4 valuable professions to society. Advertising and marketing, 13% when you ask consumers. When you ask people who work in advertising and marketing, which is the gray bar below it, it's 35%. Now, this is the first time I've done this bit. Look at the bottom of that chart. PR professional. And again, exactly the same data. 11% when you ask consumers, 23% when you ask people who work in the industry. So there's something going on that we spotted, and we call it a crisis of meaningfulness in this industry. And really that was one of the key drivers for us setting out to write this book in the first place.
And we can bring meaning back to branding and marketing and public relations. We are best suited for it. But we're not the first. There have been some pioneers through the years that have taken a look at this. I always talk about Kenneth Cole as a pioneer brand, taking on social issues. Back in the 80s, women's health issues, gun reform, taxes, marriage equality, it's been built into their DNA from the very start and still very much part of their DNA. And I think we could also say it's the same for you. You've got some experience in this area.
Yes, I think if we go back a slide, I think we may have skipped over one. But Absolute has a great history in this space as well. There's an ad for marriage equality that we ran in 2007. Which is way before this became a mainstream topic. And we have been a consistent proponent throughout the years. So proud to work for a brand that actually stands up and says what it believes in.
Absolutely. So this whole notion of market like you give a damn and making a brand human, it's very different than what we typically think of as CSR.
Yes.
It's much more beyond just giving to a charity or supporting a charity or being integrated into a charity. Can you give us an example of what that looks like?
Sure, and this is a great example that we cover in the book, really. So I think we're in this incredible new space where we're going way beyond CSR and cause marketing. We're getting to a place where, because of the opportunities afforded by technology, brands have this amazing ability to solve problems in people's lives. So there's a chapter in the book called Don't Advertise, Solve Problems.
One of my favorites.
But one of the greatest examples is City Bikes. For those of you in New York City who may have used this is a sponsorship. This was City in 2011. The mayor's office came to them and said, would you underwrite this? $40 million over 6 years. And what they generated off the back of it was incredible. The PR, the social media buzz was huge. The brand preference shifts. City had 18% jumps in brand advocacy, brand consideration because of this. More to the point, it entered the fabric of the lives of people in New York. They use city bike as a verb. When you ask somebody how did you get here, they said, I city biked it.
Right.
I think about that. So, I think we're going to play a short video, but when we talk about brands solving problems from the everyday to the epic, this is a great example of the everyday.
Well, how do you remember my bike experience?
The day I got my membership key in the mail, I was pretty excited. I was like a puppy with the new dog.
I love it when I get to sequences with the green lights on the street and how quick I was able to get to work.
Yesterday, actually, the metro was down, and I used the city bike to get home.
I've been to New York a lot in my life in the business, and I never in my life thought I'd cycle down Fifth Avenue. That was really nice.
Recently, my boyfriend and I went and he met me here and we rode on the waterfront and we sat down and got ice cream and it just was, I saw parts of the city that I'd never seen before.
So we've been pretty much everywhere, up Central Park, across Brooklyn Bridge, Soho.
It gives me a better sense of the connectivity of all the neighborhoods. I've lived here for 16 years, but you see things in patches because the subway connects you.
From my restaurant to my gym, there's no subway across town in this section, so bike is perfect.
I'm used to just going from the train station to my work, but on the bike you actually get the chance to see the city and it's just beautiful.
I've always been a big fan of alternative transport, and New York's one of the most crowded cities in the world, and I've driven in New York and it's really hard work. I think every day that I'm in Manhattan, which is 3-4 days a week, I'm using it.
The bikes are pretty...
So obviously it goes on and on with all these amazing stories from New Yorkers about how, to your point, it's gotten woven right into the fabric of their lives. So I love that example because it is solving an everyday issue. It's an everyday issue of how do I get to work?
Yeah.
And how do I get to work in a sustainable way? I think
It's a healthy way as well, yeah.
very sustainable. Yes, exactly. So if that is every day,
Yeah.
and as you say, don't advertise, don't push products, actually solve a problem.
Yeah.
What's an example of one that goes way on the other end in this epic problem?
Sure. So I think the work that Facebook has been doing recently with their mission of bringing the internet to places which don't have the internet is nothing short of spectacular. And I think we have another little video we're going to play, but this is, to me, a really great piece of purpose-driven activation where they take their mission to connect people around the world, but they help with the physical or the infrastructure to do that as well.
Cool. So let's take a look at this from a little brand called Facebook.
TCS flight line?
Fly, GTS
We're going to put power on now, okay?
Copy.
To fly on solar power takes very, very low mass. If you get rid of everything else, what's left is the thing you really need, a wing and propulsion.
All together!
But until it's actually airborne, it's hard to tell that all of it will work.
The sun is just coming up. We can see the daylight coming over the mountains now. Can you give me a wind check in the launch position?
Just being 5 knots.
7 knots off the nose right now.
GTS flight line, check that line, the wind is shifting. This is it, we have to go.
So remove the safety straps and go fly.
Copy, we are ready for launch.
Good luck. Launch station. Launching in 3, 2, 1.
Come on.
We're moving. Commands are coming up. 30%, 40, 50.
Please.
Full throttle.
This thing has the wingspan of an airliner and is going to fly on roughly the power of 3 blow dryers.
Get that done.
So if you want to see the full length video, that's on YouTube as well. But I just think it's amazing that a brand like Facebook, that we just think is about posting pictures of your kids going to Halloween trick-or-treating, that's actually solving an epic problem.
Yeah, this is the kind of problem governments used to fix, right? And this is another piece of research that we feature in the book. This is Professor Michael Porter. Please go watch his TED Talk. If we could just go back to the...
Did you go back one slide? I'm sorry.
This is a slide called Where the Resources Are. So this is revenue by stakeholder in the United States. And if you look at it, it's nonprofits, $1.2 trillion, government 3.1 trillion, corporations 20.1 trillion. So the answer to the question of where the power and the potential is in corporations, and by extension it's in this room. The corporations and brands you work for have a tremendous amount of potential to do a tremendous amount of good right from where you're sitting today.
Resources, energy, thought leadership, creativity, all the things that are sitting here, right? And it's interesting because when you look at the trend data, it's actually not a trend, it's a paradigm shift. Consumers are telling us that they want companies and brands to take a stand. And in fact, they want to know what stand they're taking, whether it's marriage equality or women's health issues or disabilities or whatever it might be. They want to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely.
And we've actually done some of our own proprietary research on brand authenticity and brand value, and it's been amazing as we've kind of been matrixing the databases together to see that we're seeing different factors driving brand strength. So popularity, obviously still driving brand strength. Trust, do I understand the products? That is still clearly a driver of brand strength. But things like authenticity, are you socially active? These are becoming huge drivers of what consumers consider to be a reliable brand that they want to engage in.
Absolutely. And if you go a step further, you can see that this has a direct correlation with performance. So this is a graph that tracks 150 socially responsible brands versus the others in the S&P 500. And you can see how they outperform it. And I think the reason is because the people showing up for work at these companies, they believe in the mission of the company. The people buying the products of these companies, they believe in what the company stands for. And you have this situation where we call it where values are driving value. And it's such a profound paradigm shift. I think every single company and every single brand needs to sit up and take notice of this.
Yeah, that's fascinating because in our brand authenticity work as well, consumers told us that when they think that a brand is authentic and is authentically contributing back to society, or to use your words, not their words, but your words, solving a problem, then they are much more likely to want to go work there, to share the company's information, to invest in the company, and then of course also buy the product. So it's really cool. So I guess the big $1 million question, when you think about your problem solving, from everyday problem solving like how do I get to work, to epic problem solving like how do I give underserved regions of the world access to the internet so that it'll change their lives? How, as a brand and as a PR professional consulting with brands and giving recommendations, how do you choose? I mean, that's like a crazy range. How do you pick the right one?
I think it's a triangulation, right? And you always have to start with what one of you speakers yesterday, Casey, was talking about, which is purpose. What is the purpose of this brand or corporation? City's purpose is enabling progress. So it makes total sense that they would invest in a bike share program. Facebook's purpose is connecting people in the world. So it makes total sense that they would invest in infrastructure to help connect people. So the number one question I always say is figure out what that purpose is. How do you clearly articulate it? Which, by the way, is a terrific place for PR. Since you guys have always been the guardians of the story, strategy is story, right? And if you can help the company articulate why it exists, that's the greatest starting point you can give anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's face it, it's got risk. And we're always in sort of coaching mode with our clients about how do you handle risk. There are brands that have taken a risk and it hasn't always worked, right?
Yeah, Starbucks is a great example of a brand that has a great purpose and does a lot of amazing things, but sometimes in the execution you can stumble as well, right? So I think they had a very noble idea when they started saying, let's have a conversation about race in America. Perhaps the execution wasn't the best in terms of when you're doing it and how you're doing it. I think most people, when they're coffee starved in the morning, the last thing they want to do is engage in an intellectual conversation on a very abstract and provocative topic. But you have to give them credit for trying to get in the game and, raise the bar of conversation.
Right, and it's not the only social issue they've ever tackled. They've tackled many to great success. In fact, some that have been very core to who they are. Even things like marriage equality, where a huge portion of their employee base is, in fact, that's an issue for them. So we'll give them credit. And taking risks means sometimes making mistakes and learning from them and
absolutely
moving on. So maybe Skittles took a page out of that?
Yeah, I think
that book?
And I think, so of course everybody knows the controversy here. I think the lesson to be learned here from Skittles is about restraint. and how a little restraint can go a long way, and how they actually had a really dignified and graceful response back to something that gained them a lot of bonus points from people who said, yeah, you could have tried to make a big deal out of this, you could have tried to make hay out of the situation, but by giving a dignified response and actually restraining yourselves from engaging in any further marketing, great job.
So they were pulled into a highly polarizing topic during this election season about immigration and even broader than that. And tell us the response. It was just
I love
so
it.
cool.
I can't remember the first part, but I memorized the second part, which was, we will respectfully refrain from anything else which could be construed as marketing. I was like, that's brilliant marketing. When you just say, I'm not going to say anything, rise above it.
Yeah. And when you get it right, you really can drive societal change. I love what we've seen just recently with brands like Target, brands like the NBA, where they are actively fighting, not just taking a stand, but actually fighting for the rights of transgender folks.
Yeah.
For Target, it's about creating a safe environment where you can walk into a store and you can go into the restroom that matches your identity. For the NBA, it's about not supporting a state and not taking an event there, a money-making event, into a state that does not support that issue. So they took a stand, they're taking a risk. I mean, obviously, Target could lose sales, NBA could lose viewership and ticket sales. Obviously, they probably lost a lot of ticket sales, but they took a stand.
They took a stand, people respect that. And what's wonderful about the point in time that we are now is that, Absolute was one of the first brands to support marriage equality back in 2007. But today you have Bud Light supporting transgender rights. That's incredible. That's Bud Light running ads. I don't know if you guys have seen this with Amy Schumer and Seth Rogen, where they're taking a stand. And I think that shows how far the pendulum has swung in terms of what you were saying, Jim, that people expect brands to have a point of view.
And it also shows that not only is it okay to take a risk and to be a leader, but then it's totally cool to follow.
Yeah.
And to, follow the issue if you believe it and support it, and also try to contribute to that kind of change. So I guess the other $1 million question in this whole discussion is, in this whole process, are you, as a brand, are you walking away from selling stuff?
No.
Are you walking away from pushing your products?
I think we're in this new paradigm where, if done right, if done authentically and if done correctly, consumers have no problem with a brand that is making money and doing good at the same time. In fact, if you look at cases like Warby Parker or Tom Shoes or any of these new wave of companies, the B Corps especially, there is no dissonance between buying a product from a company who have a social stand. And I think that's the wonderful opportunity where in the book we talk about how do brands make money and do good by harnessing the power of cool. And that's why I love that quote from Lady Gaga as well when she says, I don't want to make money, I want to make a difference.
Right.
I think it's something that we can all embrace.
And when you make a difference, you can make money in the process, so you can still sell products.
Absolutely, yes.
I think Coca-Cola also is a great example of that. You've mentioned it a number of times in other talks that you've given, where they're about water preservation.
Yeah.
They sell beverages. Beverages obviously have water in them, but they're also all about putting that water back into the system.
Yeah, it's a great, if you tie it closer to your business, then it becomes about a business model as opposed to a CSR model. And that's the greatest. The companies that are figuring that out and learning how to integrate that social good into the business model, I think are the ones who are going to survive for the next 100 years.
So if we as an industry have a little bit of a crisis of insecurity, I guess, about the meaning that we bring into the world, it sounds like what you're saying is we actually can reverse that.
Yes.
And we actually can make this a noble profession, bring true meaning to the communities that we live in and serve, but also build our brands in the process.
I think there is such a golden opportunity right now because you guys are the guardians of the stories of brands and why they exist and the role they play in consumers' lives. And I think if you have a seat at that table and you're able to now say, look, this is what your purpose is, this is how you articulate it, this is how you bring it to life with stories of product design or marketing experiences, I think there's an amazing opportunity for PR to actually rise to the top of the kind of, team of agencies that any brand has and really be a trusted advisor and a guardian in this new space. Like I said, strategy is story. I think if you guys can tell the story better than anybody else, I definitely think there's a way that all of us can add more meaning into our daily lives.
Absolutely. What I find interesting about that is probably more than any other discipline, like Kenneth Cole, like absolutely, we've been doing this. I think that's sort of the way to think about it.
Yeah. PR is one of the only weapons you have against ad blocking. If you can figure out how to get a brand to tell a story and create an experience that's so compelling that people will spontaneously tell other people about it, no ad blocker in the world can defeat that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, good. It's a golden opportunity.
Awesome. So we have a few minutes left. If you all have any questions for Afdhel? Yeah. Hand went right up.
Thank you.
Hi.
A few of us in this room heard Michael Porter talk a few years ago when the whole concept of shared value and that chart that came out of that was sort of nascent. And he stood up before many of us, it was primarily corporate communicators, and announced that CSR was dead. So that's really tough for corporate social responsibility departments or the people within CorpCom departments who are working on that. It's also very tough for the nonprofits and the charities who depend on those corporations to fund their good works. What would you say to a CEO who was considering moving to shared value business proposition and taking money away from the corporate social responsibility folks?
So I think this is a golden opportunity for CSR because that has always been the department inside the brand that has had to think about social impact and responsibility. I think the world is catching up to CSR. So I think now the opportunity is for people in CSR to work with your counterparts in marketing, the CTO, the CFO, and say, guys, this is what our consumers want, this is what our communities want. I think there's an opportunity for you to help shape the agenda in a way that's never been possible, right? And in the book, actually, we interviewed 3 different types of organizations, so brands, artists, and nonprofits. And some of the nonprofits out there are doing work that would be the envy of any brand in terms of how they use data, how they use story, how they use design. And we call them the new nonprofits. So these are people like Charity Water or Global Citizen or Do Something or Pencils of Promise. And what we're saying is CSR was just one model of how a corporation could work with a nonprofit. There's a billion models out there that no one has invented. And the wonderful thing with all the technology that we heard about today is you can now go create all these new models. So I think it's actually the beginning of a whole new golden era.
It's a new day.
It's a new day of how you can do this on a whole new level. I think that's how you tap into the 20 trillion through that.
Right.
It's not that CSR is dead, it's that it's become integral.
Yeah.
It's not a separate entity in a company for it to be sustainable.
Absolutely. One of the quotes somebody said was, Nike does it really well. When you walk into a meeting with Nike and you have the CSR person, the supply chain person, the brand person, all sitting at the table, you're like, oh, you guys are thinking in an integrated way.
Right.
And you're combining budgets and you're combining, things. And you can create much more impact than if everybody was off in their silos doing stuff separately. So yeah, 100% agree.
One more question.
Hanging over here on the wall, can you talk a little bit, in the past a lot of times it would be good deeds by corporations and then communicating it.
Yeah.
And I think we live in a day and an age where employee and consumer engagement, creating opportunities to not only do something good, but involve your communities in it.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the greatest quotes that's in the book here was from a young guy I met at a conference. He's about 25 years old. He said, when a company spends $100,000 doing something good and then $10 million advertising it to me, something feels fishy, right? It feels like the proportions are off, right? That's when I think you can say, is this brand washing, greenwashing, whatever you want to call it? So our premise in the book is, what if that company spent that $10 million doing something genuinely amazing, right? Then spend the $100,000 on PR to go tell everybody about it. I think that's where you have to shift the paradigm, and we say, if brands can create experiences, whether they're physical experiences or digital experiences, that are at the intersection of useful and delightful, like the examples that we saw, that's when people will start to tell other people. And I think PR is the match that can light that spark, can light that conversation, and create that amplification without the need for going down the kind of traditional paid advertising route. Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope everybody enjoys Afdhel's book, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Afdhel. I hope that not only
certainly restored your faith, however much it had been shaken by the AI presentation in humanity.